Welcome to another episode of Make Mental Health Matter, where I talk to guests specifically on Wednesdays. I have warriors that come on and share their story through whatever they have been through in this life and really into that place of hope. If this happens to be your first time watching, and you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit or click the subscribe button. If you happen to be watching on any of the TV streaming services, make sure you add us into your favorites, your watch list, your wish list, whatever you happen to call it. And so that you don't miss another episode, because like I always say, I promise you, every single guest that I have on, whether it's on the Monday show at 11 a.m. Mountain Time or this show, which is at 7 p.m. Mountain Time every single Wednesday, every single guest that I have is just really, really incredible. And I am very excited to bring on my guest for today. She has a large story and a journey as a warrior. So without further ado, I will bring her in. Blair, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor.
Absolutely. Well, tell the audience a little bit about your story.
It's funny because when you say that, I want to start rapping like the theme song of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Now, this is the story all about how. Born and raised Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. I am a social media and publicity expert. My company, Blair Kaplan Communications, has just celebrated our 15th anniversary.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm considered one of the pioneers of social media marketing, which is kind of weird to say, but because I think pioneer and I think like churning butter, but I do not churn butter. And yeah, I specialize in social media strategy, implementation, and social media education. But I'm also the founder of the Global Resilience Project, and that's what we're probably going to talk about today. But just some other things you should know about me. I love cats. I love animal print and sparkles. I spend my spring, summer, and fall outside frolicking in the woods, the ocean, rivers, lakes. I love traveling and music. And in winter, I like to travel to the beach.
Amazing. Well, that is awesome. I know sometimes you're when you say it like pioneer, you're like, am I not? What does that word really mean? But I think
Yeah.
that's amazing that, 15 years, that's awesome. Congratulations. And I would love to learn a little bit more about how you got into the work that you do and whether it's marketing or the Resilient Project.
Yeah, I mean, a high level, I think it's important to know that like I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. When I've had jobs, I've been an intrapreneur. But I've always really excelled at being creative, writing, planning events. So I naturally, after deciding that the path to being a psychologist wasn't for me, I found public relations. And that's just, I naturally was doing it anyways. The Global Resilience Project is interesting. So it's a community and a safe space for people to share stories of resilience. And it's a container for big feelings. And I didn't wake up one day and be like, I want to be a resilience thought leader. Just like you, like I had a story that led me to this very moment. And if you want, I can share it.
Yeah, please do.
So, content warning, my story is heavy. I believe the topics in the show are quite heavy. So, if you need to step away, please do so and come back. And if you need help finding a mental health professional in your community, you can reach out to me and I will help you find the right help. So, child of divorce, the daughter of a man who lived with addiction, and not just any addiction, but addiction first to cocaine and then to heroin, like synthetic heroin, injecting his drugs, and then smoking crack. And I was very close with my dad. I was born in the 80s. But when I was 7, my father sold his business. He was a diamond dealer and a gemologist. We were taken care of financially until my dad's addiction got really bad. And he not only sold the business, but he left my mother and he left me and my sister because he couldn't be around us. And he basically lived like almost on the streets, but not really. Like he always had housing and he always maintained a job, but he was in and out of our life. And it was a lot of disappointment, a lot of, I'm going to come to your birthday party and him not showing up. I'm going to come pick you up for family time, and him not showing up. I thought he stopped loving me. I didn't know he wasn't well. That wasn't the conversation in the early 90s. It was more like he's an a-hole. Like, I'm sorry that your dad sucks. Not, oh, he's sick, he still loves you. Because I couldn't figure it out. I was like, why doesn't he love me anymore? And as you can imagine, that broke my heart and caused a lot of like anxiety, depression, abandonment issues, and all sorts of other mental health struggles. Fast forward to my 20s. I was lucky enough to be given the gift to go to something called the Landmark Forum. I went because I worked for Lululemon Athletica at the time, and they gifted it to me. And I saw it as a free trip to go to Vancouver, British Columbia to see my best friend. And yeah, I'll do a little training. Like, I didn't really care. Like, I was in my 20s. I didn't care. But something clicked while at this training, and I got the tools I needed to forgive my dad. I got the tools I needed. And I remember having this most beautiful conversation, lots of crying. And I decided to let everything go, forgive him, and accept him for who he was, and accept whatever relationship he can give me. And so he began his journey towards sobriety. He was more involved in my family's life, my sister, his parents, his siblings. He started to come visit me. He lived in the middle of Canada, and he was coming all the way out west a few times a year. We talked all the time. He walked me down the aisle at my wedding. Like, I got a second chance. And yeah, like that was really special. But at the end of 2018, we learned he was terminally ill. He had COPD and lung cancer, and I felt robbed. Like, I finally had him back in my life, and we worked so hard, and now he's being taken away from me. And I just started talking about our story, which was very taboo. Like, you don't talk about the skeletons, but anyone who would listen, I would talk about it. And what was happening was our story was inspiring people to get a therapist or forgive a family member or choose sobriety. And I said, hey, Dad, our story's inspiring people. What if we gather stories of resilience from around the world, and we write a book, and we bookend it with your story and my story? And so when you're no longer here, our story can still help people. So in March 2019, the Global Resilience Project was born. But little did I know, my resilience muscle was about to be tested. And I'm going to list this off like it's a lot, like a, grocery list. And unfortunately, it kind of is, but it isn't. It has happened over a few years, but like, learning my dad was going to die was just the tip of the iceberg. I learned after my father was going to pass away. My grandfather passed away. He was like my dad. On the way home from his funeral, my husband and I got in a car accident on the highway, and I got a concussion. A few months later, my husband almost died. He had a heart attack and quadruple bypass surgery. He's fine now, but that was a lot. He was in his early 40s. I was in my mid 20s. Wait, no, I lied. I was in my mid 30s. I wish I was in my mid 20s. This whole time we struggled with fertility, and I was told we probably couldn't get pregnant naturally, which was very, very hard. And the pandemic, we don't need to talk about that because we know what happened. The pandemic. About a year after Shane's heart attack, we learned we were pregnant. We got pregnant naturally, which was amazing, but we miscarried, which was heartbreaking. 3 weeks after the miscarriage, my father-in-law suddenly died after a 3-week battle with cancer. 3 months later, my mother suddenly died after a 3-week battle with cancer. And then my dad died 360 days after my mom. So in the same year as my mom dying, my dad died. What started off as a legacy project turned into a global movement because we also started a podcast. We started, sharing on social media. We have a merchandise line. I ended up naturally becoming a motivational speaker, teaching people how to strengthen their resilience muscle and sharing our story. And, I have the privilege of being here with you. And so that's like the high level. The Global Resilience Project is a community to share stories. It's a community to heal, to strengthen your resilience muscle, to rewire your brain to be more resilient.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your story. And I can imagine losing so many people in a row. And I know you talk about it like kind of like it's a laundry list, but it's like one after the other, and happen to lose at least 3 of them to the same disease. That is really, really hard in those short amounts of time. So thank you for sharing all of that. And I know the first time you and I talked, I was like, man, wow, that's a lot. And to go through all that you went through and still come out of it wanting to become this global movement that ultimately shares experiences with all different types of people that are going through similar or have gone through similar things and learning how to be resilient. I mean, that's just huge. You don't realize how important having the muscle memory really from, or knowing how to be resilient. I don't know if we ever really know how to be resilient. It just kind of happens, but understanding it is probably a little bit better too, knowing how to be
Mhm.
resilient.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And what I've really learned is that like resilience, like we're all born resilient. Like we're resilient until we die. Like it's like a human instinct to be resilient. And like when you're so deep in like a trauma or a challenge, like you just have to get through it. One foot in front of the other. And we do have this resilience muscle. And sometimes we have to start using it right out of the womb. Some of us aren't as lucky as others. And some of us, have a few years of really bad experiences. But there are things you can do when you're not in that trauma, or even when you are in a trauma, but there are things you can do when life is good. And those things will strengthen your resilience muscle. So when life gets hard, it's less hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that made me think, I'm like, I don't know why I just said we don't know how to be resilient. It made me think of one
You
of
are
my
resilient, like your
I
story.
well, and I was thinking actually one of my mentors literally popped in my head after I said that. And I was like, what did you just say? Because she talks a lot about babies, like you just talked about, is, I mean, we don't know any better, but like to learn how to crawl, learning how to walk, learning how to eat, all of those things are part of our resilient muscle, because the baby doesn't get up, fall down, and just say, screw it, I'm going to walk away, right? Or I'm not even going to try anymore. But we are born resilient. Just sometimes we forget how to be, like you said, as we're going through a trauma, or like when we're really in the thick of everything. So,
Yeah. No, definitely. And I think, it's interesting because I've had like some people be like, how did you get through it? Like, how did you do it? Like I wouldn't have been able to. I'm like, what are your choices? And then I have people reaching out like, wow, your life so interesting. Like I've had nothing happen. And I'm like, well, that's nice. What's that like? What's
you're like,
that
oh,
like?
really?
Having everyone alive.
Yeah.
You're going to be in for a rude awakening because guess what? Someone you love is going to die and no one prepares you. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. It's definitely, I mean, I think that those that haven't really had the experience of whatever, it is very different when you go through, and I'm just speaking from, like, I do a support group for grief and loss, and when people come in and they share their stories, it opens up this world of, wow, I'm not so alone. So it's interesting how some people, they're like, I haven't been through anything like that, I don't even know how you got through it, and you're like, I don't know either, but I just did. And
Yep.
it made me a better person, at least from my perspective of, yeah, life, the phrase that comes into my head, life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Yeah.
I don't
Except
know.
like, yeah, I think we need a new saying,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, but yeah, like that's pretty much like, a lot of people just keep going about their life. Like I have a business. So while going through all this, I still had to run my business. Like I didn't get bereavement leave in Canada. We have bereavement leave. I don't know if you do in the US, but my sister who has a job, like an employer that's not herself, she got paid time off, right? I didn't have that. Like I had to push through. Like if I don't work, I don't make money. And I wasn't prepared. And we're Jewish and like it's very expensive to bury someone.
Mm.
Like, my father-in-law, we cremated, and I think that's like a different, well, our religion, like Judaism, we don't do that. My husband isn't Jewish.
Mm.
We cremated my father-in-law, but like burying two parents in a year, like no one prepares you for that type of expense. Like it's not like there's just so much that no one talks about. So how do we prepare?
Yeah, that is true. It is. It's very, even a cremation is very expensive. But having all those expenses is something that you don't prepare for.
No,
Absolutely.
No. And I think mentally it's interesting. Like I know you have your own losses, and so maybe that's part of the conversation, but like my sister's my younger sister. So I was 7 and my sister was 3. So she never really had a relationship with my dad and doesn't remember it, but she was super close with my mom. Like almost like codependent, not almost. They were very codependent. And my mom and I had a different type of relationship where like we were close, but she saw me more as like a friend, like her partner. Like I was very mature. I've always been very independent, but like I didn't, not because of her, but because of everything. I don't feel like I had a full child experience in my family. So it's interesting because my mom, her mom died in her 90s, my grandma, my Baba Ruthie. And her diet was Chinese food and chicken fingers. And she used to be like a really heavy smoker and loved to like go to the casino and play the slot. Like she was not the beacon of health. So in my mind, I didn't even think, oh, my mom might die one day. Like it wasn't even like she was 62, right? Like I was still like 20 years. Like I didn't even think, like it wasn't ever a thought that went through my head. So when my mom died, my sister's like, this was my worst nightmare. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, this was like my biggest fear come true. And I'm like, it's so interesting because I never thought of that. Like it wasn't even a thought I ever had. So it's just so interesting because that's something that my sister thought a lot about and I didn't. And it was almost like we both were very much caught off guard, but like very different experiences during the grief.
Yeah, that's also another really interesting thing to talk about is how we experience grief so differently, even in the same family, and how it affects us depending on the relationship that we have with others. Yeah.
So for us, like there's some really beautiful traditions in Judaism, and there's this thing called Shiva. And so it's like you sit around with like your family and people send food and everyone comes and shares memories. It's actually really beautiful. It's a very much like a community like thing. And it's nice because it's always like people come out of the woodworks like, oh, I haven't seen you in 20 years. But my mom died in the height of COVID in Winnipeg, Manitoba in February. And so for you out there who don't know, it was like in the minus 40s. And that's the same in Celsius and Fahrenheit. Like it was cold. My dad too, he died in February. And like my dad, we had to hold off on a day for the funeral because the ground was too frozen and there was a blizzard. It was so cold. And we had these outdoor funerals. For my mom, we were only allowed 10 people and it was live streamed. And it was hilarious because the guy doing the live stream of the funeral was actually my sister's bat mitzvah DJ. So talk about a pandemic pivot. Life cycle events. But like, having my mom had a lot of friends, a lot of patients, big community, and having only to have a few people at the ceremony. And then because it was COVID, no one would hug us. Like some people hugged us, but like, remember like Canada, we had COVID, like rules for a long time, laws, whatever. But then, so we couldn't really do a normal Shiva. And so me and my sister hung out with my aunt, uncle, and 2 cousins. And people were sending food, which is like what you do. But people were sending food to feed like 50. There were 6 of us. And like I ate so many bagels. I turned into a bagel. I ate so much ice cream. I ate so much. Like all I did was eat. Like especially because I'm sober. Like I'm like, food feels good. But it's so funny because like it was minus a million. People were sending food. There was nothing. We couldn't go anywhere or do anything. And it was just such a weird experience. And like people would come and like want to hug us, but like they'd stand on the other side of the door and be like, I'm pretending. I'm like, okay. You tried.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think some people don't quite know what to do when in loss in general. And I remember us talking because my sister also passed in February, and it happened to be that February connection for whatever reason. That month seems to have a lot of people that pass away in February.
Terrible month.
Yeah. I'm like, the month of love, the month I want to skip. Can we just skip February? Good thing it's short.
November to February just are not my thing.
Yeah. Well, what would you, with this experience, so I guess the question that's kind of popping up into my head, and I'm curious what your answer is people who don't quite know how to help or what to say to somebody who has lost so many people in their life, what would you say to them?
So one of the biggest things I've noticed, and like people checking in right away, like we had a lot of support in our first year. Well, it kind of ended up being a few years for me and my sister, but then what? What happens on Mother's Day or Father's Day or their birthday or the holidays? And I think like, I don't expect anyone to do anything, but it is sure nice that on Mother's Day, when I get a couple messages from people thinking of you or sending me a heart or commenting on a post I make. And sometimes it's just those little things. I mean, grief doesn't go away. I feel like grief is always there. You just learn to layer your life around it. And like, I still think about my mom and dad every day. The baby, like, I didn't even have a chance to like deal like with that kind of grief. Like, like I think about Dave all the time. My mom and dad, luckily, mostly my mom, come to me a lot in my dreams. My mom was in my dream last night. My husband said I was sleep talking. He said I kept talking about bacon and dirt. I don't know. I'm like, I remember being on a cruise ship with my mom, so I don't know how that worked. But in like when it happens, sometimes it triggers people. Like when my mom passed away, a good friend of mine sort of went AWOL. Like she sort of went quiet and I didn't really hear from her. And I said to her, like, I really needed you. And she lost her dad many years ago. And she's like, I couldn't do it. Like, I just couldn't handle it. And like, I would have gotten it if she said, hey, Blair, this is really hard. I need to step away, and sent me, and we talked about it. And she apologized because I felt abandoned. And like, I have abandonment issues from my childhood. And like, your parents dying is like the ultimate abandonment, like the ultimate abandonment. Like there's no coming back. And then I had friends who just sometimes would message me every hour, just say, what do you need? Like, what can I do for you? Some people I didn't even, we didn't even talk, but they sent a gift card for food. And let me tell you, like the biggest thing that was a help was like gift cards to things like apps that we can order food if you have that accessible in the area you are, because like you don't have to talk to anyone. You press buttons and food shows up. Like for 2 years, I just like didn't even have energy to cook because like right when I got over my mom's death, my dad died. And like when people would feed me or like give me money to spend on apps, like that was the easiest thing for me to make sure I was eating. And self-care, like massages. My friend got me, one of my best friends got me a session with like a death doula and a grief counselor.
Oh, wow. I
got books. Like, there's lots of great things out there. And sometimes when someone would say to me, Blair, like, what do you need? Like, my mom back, like my dad alive. Like I would say, don't ask them what they need. I think whatever you do will be received, whether it's sending them flowers or a gift card or just sitting with them in silence while they cry, shoveling, if it's winter, go shovel their driveway. If it's summer, go mow their lawn. Like it, maybe they need a haircut or hair wash, maybe get them a blowout. It's really hard to take care of yourself when you're in such deep grief, and this. Yeah. What was helpful for you?
No, all of those are great pointers, and I do want to continue this conversation, but we have to go to our quick sponsored break, and then we will come back and I'll let you know my thoughts there too. So we'll be back in just a few.
Eva Black Occurrence here, and I am the host of One Punch Superstars, where we meet real people who chose to fight for their hopes and their dreams and become the champions of their destiny. You can find us on Achieve TV every Tuesday and Wednesday at noon Mountain Standard Time, right here on E360 TV.
And like that, we're back. If you are just joining us, as a reminder, if you are on YouTube, make sure you click down that subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. Or if you're on a streaming service, make sure that you add us to your favorites, your watch list, whatever they call them. But I am talking today with Blair, and she has shared her journey through multiple losses, also having a concussion, her husband experiencing a heart attack, stroke.
Heart attack.
Heart attack. Okay. I was like, that's one of those. Sorry. And also just really how you have taken all of this grief and loss and turned it into the Global Resilience Project. And before the break, we were just talking about when people in general go through grief and loss, a lot of times other people around you have no idea how to talk to you, what to say, what to do, asking what you need. But most of the time, you really have no idea because you're really going through the thick of all of it. And what is important to remember also as we talk about grief and loss is that we are all born with resilience, and we may have at points in our life forget that we can be resilient. And so this is a really great reminder as we have this conversation to keep in mind, no matter what you are going through currently, you can always find that hope or that place of hope. And there is a way to bring out those resilient skills. So little snapshot of what we talked about, way more than that. So go back and watch it if you haven't yet. And I know you had asked the question right before we went to the sponsored break about what was helpful for me. And so I'm going to piggyback on a little bit of what you said. I remember that first year, almost a whole year, it was like a fog. And a lot of people that I talk to is very much, it's just, you're merely surviving instead of actually living. And so when people reach out, and especially I know the first couple of months, the same, I had a lot of people reaching out and saying, what can I do? How can I help? Blah, blah. But honestly, I have no idea if I actually responded to all of them. And it is really helpful, like you were saying, is to have, I think it's everywhere, but there's an app called Meal Train, maybe in the US, maybe all over. But you can actually set up meals for somebody who may have experienced a trauma or a tragedy or whatever they happen to go through. But sharing of meals, getting gift cards so that you can use them at a later time, that's always helpful. I know that we had some of that with our family, but we have a really big family. So we were able to we kept it a little more isolated, I guess you could say, in a way. Just because since my sister died by suicide, it felt like it needed to be more private. But of course, now I talk about it all the time. But I think it's just that first year, or really the first few months, is for me, my coping mechanism was just keep going. That was what I did to keep myself busy. And I had a 1-year-old at that time. And so I just had to keep going. And that's all that I knew. So that was my coping mechanism till I hit what I call the virtual wall of grief, that I ultimately was like, hey, I should probably take care of myself. And it was hard. And I had to go ask for help. And I went and talked to a counselor. And then finally I found community. And that was really the changing point for me. So that's why I love what you do with the Global Resilient Project, because it is this community. That's what we need, I think, the most, to be as resilient as we can, but also to really travel this journey of grief and loss. And one thing that you said is it doesn't ever stop. It is a constant. It's not always sadness, right? There's celebration, there is moving through it, but it's a journey, and it's a lifelong journey. And at least what I say to most people I talk to, especially in the grief and loss group, is that it doesn't necessarily always get easier, but you do have that one point where your brain kind of shifts into celebration versus that sadness, or that's at least how my experience went.
Yeah, no, and that's really beautiful. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, the fog is real. Like, how is it halfway through 2023? Like, I lost a couple years. Like, I was surviving. And also, I mean, I don't know, like, maybe you can talk about this, but I know with me, I lost 3 parents in their 60s who didn't retire. Like, my dad had to retire. He was very not well, but like my mom, all she talked about her whole life was like, when I retire, when I retire. Dave, my father-in-law, when I retire, when I retire. No one retired. And so now I'm like, I don't want a life that I'm waiting to retire from. I want to live my life now. I want to live a life that's my life. I don't want there to be this division of like work, 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 retire. I want to have a life where I can do what I want, when I want, how I want, love the work I'm doing, and take the time off I need when I need it and when I want it. Because, like, no one's, it's like we're not getting healthier. Like, there's more and more stuff. Like, more and more people I know are dying or getting sick and like getting cancer, and like, oh God, like, and like, it's not like, oh, when's my turn? But like, I don't want to find out one day that something will happen and I can't keep going at my speed or doing what I want to do. And so basically my mom dying brought me back to life.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing that too, because that was beautiful, is that we oftentimes are constantly in this cycle, or the rat race, as that pops to my head, of work, work, work to retire. But what if you don't ever get to that point to be able to retire? I mean, that sounds what popped into my head. I was like, wow, that was an interesting thought. But I'm like, you of course would be dead, so you wouldn't know the difference. But still, it's like,
It's like
that
yeah,
you didn't
like,
live.
I mean, like, it's interesting. I think about like when I die, like what would they say about me at my funeral? What songs would I play? How am I going to be remembered? Am I leaving a legacy? Am I making a difference? Am I helping? And, generally, like, kind of what guides me is not like, how am I going to be remembered? But I want to make sure that while I'm here, I'm making a difference and I'm helping. I don't want to be just a shell of a human existing. I want to live. Like, I want to live. I don't want to just have a life. I want to be alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, there's a lot of people walking around as if they're like zombies, like they wake up, they hit their alarm, they get up right before they have to go to work, they get their clothes on, go to work, do their job, come home, sit down, turn the TV on, start having drinks, go to bed, do it all over again. It's like, what kind of life is that? Are you happy? Like, hey, I take my antidepressants, and like, I'm depressed. I have anxiety. I manage it. I'm not always happy. I struggle a lot. But the general consensus of my life, it's like, I generally have a pretty good life. Like, yeah, everyone died, but like, I travel and like, I get outside and I have a 3-hour morning routine. And I know that sounds luxurious to people with kids. I'm not having kids. I have cats. But, I like to wake up and move my body and be outside. And instead of having a candlelit bath this morning, I had a hot tub, and then I meditate and journal. I do this all from like 6 to 8:30. Like, I like to ease into my day. Like, what are you rushing for? Why are you up at night on your phone for 3 hours in bed when you could be sleeping? Are you escaping? Are you going down a vortex on TikTok? I mean, I do too.
Yeah, those are great questions to throw out. Are you happy in what you're doing in your life? And what guides you into what you're doing on a daily basis?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important to remind ourselves every day. I am similar. I wish that I could just sleep in and ease into my day. Most of the time it doesn't happen that way, but being self-employed, I am able to set those boundaries, or at least like dictate my schedule versus somebody else dictating it. And I think that's really important. I don't think I ever really fully embraced that until this year, specifically because it is at that point of what is it taking away from you personally and or your family if you're constantly, like you said, sitting in bed, going down the TikTok hole or whatever hole that might be. And
Mhm.
how are you experiencing this life? And we don't have to wait. We don't have to wait till we retire. We don't have to wait until somebody gives us permission. We already have permission to experience the life that we want to now because we never know how long it's going to be, right?
Yeah, and I'm not saying like, oh my God, you hate your job, go quit. Like,
Yeah.
don't do that unless you have a backup plan and money to pay for life. Like I've done that. I've done that. Like, been like, I'm gonna do this, and I quit my job, and then I'm like, oh no, now I need to bartend. Like it's happened. But I mean, it's like micro actions, micro movements. Like, like start by like maybe you do drink too much. Maybe you're not drinking any water. Like maybe you don't have any vegetables. Maybe you're not eating enough vegetables. Like start adding little things in. Maybe you are up too late. Go to bed half an hour earlier or like get up half an hour earlier. Like there are little things you can do and it all matters. It all matters.
That's amazing. So tell me a little bit more. I would love to just learn, like when you're on stage, what do you talk to the audience about specifically?
Well, Kelly, I like to talk to people about how to strengthen their resilience muscle. We all have one. It runs from the top of our head to the tip of our toes. It's basically invisible, but we all have it. Like I said, we're born resilient. And there are things we can do to make it stronger. And so I talk about my favorite 5 secrets to strengthening your resilience muscle.
Love that.
Yeah.
And then with the Global Resilience Project, what do you besides the books that you have? And I know you are putting together another book.
Yeah. And you're an author in it.
I'm excited.
So excited. So I didn't know if I was going to do another book. Like I limped across the finish line, and not because I wasn't capable, but because everyone died. Like it was really hard to hold space. So we paused the project a lot. So when the book came out, I was like, everyone's like, are you going to do another one? I want to be in it. And I didn't know, but I was on vacation in the fall, and my first vacation since well before the pandemic, since before Shane's heart attack, since 2018, actually. Wow. And my mom came to me in a dream, and she was telling me how proud she was of me, and I was getting ready to publish the second book. So I woke up and I was like, let's do it. I'm ready. So right now we are accepting stories of resilience. So if you have overcome any challenge in life and you want to share your story, you can do that in our book. You can learn more about it at theglobalresilienceproject.com. And when you are a co-author, you also get to be interviewed on our podcast, Radical Resilience. What's really awesome is the last couple of weeks, we've been like top 10 and charting in Zimbabwe for mental health. And a few months ago, we were charting in Romania. So I love that we literally we have this global reach with Radical Resilience, and you could listen to it. We put out an episode every week. The one coming out on Friday, my sister and I talk about pet grief because I just lost my husband and I had 3 cats until the weekend when our oldest passed away. And my sister and I have lost some cats and a bunny. And so pet grief, we talk about all the things. So sometimes it's me and my sister, who is our mental health director. And sometimes it's me and you, or me, you and Alana. And we just jam about whatever you want. We talk about resilience in your story. And then we also have a merchandise line. So on our website, there's a shop, and kind of sassy, dark humor, resilient clothing, shirts that say Resilient AF or Dead Parent Society. It's the club that no one wants to join. Shirts that say resilient. We have one that says good grief, and the crew neck sweatshirt. If you purchase the crew neck, a portion of the good grief shirt get donated to Camp Aaron, and it's an organization that supports kids who've lost siblings and parents, like loved ones. So we're a social enterprise. We're not just this, community. We're a social enterprise. I just got back from Ghana. We were opening a children's center there. I was helping a local man make his vision come true and help support children's education in rural Ghana, which was super cool. What else? Oh yeah, and I speak around the world. Our story is going to be featured on an Amazon Prime show that's coming out sometime soon. First, it was summer 2023, but that might be loosey-goosey, so summer or fall. And we're going to be at the Emmys. There's a private event for celebrities and media, and we've been invited to be there to hand out our book and talk to the celebrities and the media about what we're doing. And I'm here to be of service. I'm here to be that container of big feelings and support you and give you that platform to share your story. Like, that's why I'm here. This is my life's work, from pain to purpose.
That's amazing. I love that. I mean, you're doing all these things that, and I know that marketing is what you do in your business too. So being able to have different avenues of spreading your message, and it really is truly a global project, like you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody, and that's what I love, especially about having this show and being on other people's show, is that no matter where we are in the world, we all at one point in time potentially struggle with the loss of somebody or a pet, or it could be a relationship. It could also be possibly an identity. And we still go through that grief and loss process. It's not necessarily a step by step. It is whatever that experience is for you. And no matter where you are in the world, we can all really understand each other. And I think that is one thing that I love, and why I have this show, is because truly being able to connect the world, even just one person at a time, and be able to give them any information and tools as to how they can help people, but then also hear the stories, is, I think, brilliant. So being able to put it into a book, I think that is just amazing.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And I mean, who knows where the future of this project has in store. To this, this morning I had a conversation with two women in Ireland, and one of them is has a big network of people she wants to bring in. And so, who knows what's going to happen. And we have people in Africa and Australia and all over North America. Like, we are resilient, and we don't have to go through like the hard stuff and the good stuff. We don't have to go through anything alone. And it, as like going through something as tragic as like a loss of a family member that's so close to you is lonely. It's lonely, but we don't have to do it alone. And that's why I've created this space.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so important, is just knowing that there are so many other people out there in this world that have these safe containers that you can come into and share whatever you're going through, and not feeling alone is huge. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, definitely.
So what is the next, besides putting together the second book? What is your big focus right now with everything that's going on, or is there?
Well, the book is a big focus because I would like to get it out in November. That's the plan, but we know how plans can change. And I'm just anticipating the Amazon Prime show coming out. It's called My Story, and I have my own episode. So I'm just anxiously anticipating that and doing some preparation in hopes of that, because I'm hoping that really helps raise awareness of what we're doing and helps get some authors in the book and raises awareness for everyone and their stories. So I'm working on that, and I got a couple other things I'm working on in the background.
Amazing. Well, anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to share?
I just want everyone to know that you're resilient and you will get through it, but it is completely okay to not be okay. You can completely fall apart, lie in the bathtub and cry and eat ice cream and cookie dough and do whatever you need to do. Get it out of you. Don't pretend to be okay when you're not. Just let it out, process your feelings, and know that you're not alone, and you have support from me and at least the Global Resilience Project. Like, you can come to us and I will help you.
That's amazing. Well, this conversation, I mean, I literally could talk to you for hours because I know that we already talked before, but what I love is being able, again, to just connect. You're in Canada and I'm in the US, and knowing that there is a place for people to go, and no matter what you're going through or what you have gone through, know that you are resilient and there is a space for you to share your story. So if you want to be an author in the book, again, there is the website below. Yes. So go check that out for sure. And Blair, I am so grateful for you coming on and sharing your experience. And it's definitely one of those journeys that you never wish that you have to go through, but it is one that you've gone through, and to be able to share your experience, I think will absolutely help and touch somebody else that is watching this. So thank you so much.
And thank you so much for creating such a beautiful space to allow me to share, and for all the work that you do. And I'm excited to feature you in the book and help raise awareness of everything that you're doing. So,
yay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you. All right, y'all. That was another amazing episode of Make Mental Health Matter. Again, we go live I always say we, but I usually always have a guest. So yes, we. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. My guests, again, are just incredible humans, incredible souls that have been through experiences in their life that have led them into this place of hope. And that's really the whole goal of Wednesdays, is bringing these warriors to you for you to identify maybe a little piece of their story within what you're going through, and know that you're really truly not alone in this thing that we call life. And also on Mondays, that's really the place that I bring resources, information, and professionals or advocates of mental health to give you those tools and the tips and all those great things. And that is on Mondays at 11 a.m. As a reminder, and I know that I shared this on the previous Monday. I'm like, that was this last Monday. I don't know. My days kind of mixed together. We had a holiday in there, the 4th of July. Hopefully everybody was safe yesterday. But ultimately on Monday, I shared that day, at least, we were about 46 days from when I climb a mountain. And now it's even shorter. But August 18th and 19th is when I'm actually doing the 29029 Everesting Challenge. I will be climbing a mountain in Utah 13 times to equal 30 miles total. And we are still raising funds for that. So if you are somebody who has experienced a loss or of a person, or maybe you have somebody who survived and is a warrior, and you want to put their name on the fronts of our shirts, we're actually doing the BCC Evolution logo, which, let's see, this corner, the heart over here. It will be the heart logo, and then we're actually putting the names in the heart. So we will showcase as many names as we get. With a $100 donation or more, you can put somebody's name on the front of our shirts. If you are a business and you want to put your logo on the back, with $1,000 or more, your business logo goes on the back. And we will be sharing this event live. So we will showcase the stories of the loved ones that you potentially lost on the front of our shirts, and the companies that are backing us up will be on our backs. So as a reminder, all you have to do is go text Climb for Mind to 44321. Support me and my friend Philip up the mountain 13 times to equal 30 miles, or the same amount, which is 29029 Everest. It's like you were going up Mount Everest. That's ultimately what it's supposed to be. It's going to be the most mentally, physically, emotionally challenging thing I've ever done in my life. And to top it off, I broke my toe about a week ago. And so I haven't been able to train over the last week or so. But as soon as I can get back into the gym, I'm going to have to start training all over again, hopefully to get back up to that place where I was before my toe broke. You know, life happens, things happen. As I say, it's not about perfection. It's about getting the information out. And unfortunately, that's kind of how I look at it with my toe, is that, you know, things happen and talking about resilient, right? We're resilient, we get back to it and really start utilizing those skills over and over. So no matter what you do, make sure you join me next Monday at 11 a.m. or next Wednesday at 7 p.m. But I hope this information was helpful, and feel free to share and follow so that you don't miss another episode. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.